Picture this. You've made it through another long day. You're finally lying in bed, the lights are off, the house is quiet, and your body is ready to rest. But the moment your head hits the pillow, you hear it. That ringing, buzzing, hissing, or humming sound that wasn't nearly as noticeable during the day suddenly feels like it's turned up to maximum volume. It fills your ears, occupies your mind, and makes it almost impossible to relax. You shift positions, adjust your pillow, maybe turn on a fan or some background noise, but the sound is still there, relentless and exhausting. If this is your nightly reality, you're not imagining it, and you're definitely not alone. Millions of people with tinnitus report the exact same pattern. The phantom sounds in their ears get noticeably worse at night, and for most of them, the reason why remains a complete mystery. But here's what matters. Tinnitus getting worse at night isn't random, and it's not just because everything else is quieter. There's a specific physiological trigger that most people, and even some healthcare providers, completely overlook. Once you understand what that trigger is and how it works, you can start making targeted changes that genuinely reduce the intensity of your nighttime tinnitus and give you back the kind of sleep your body desperately needs. Welcome to Dr. Welling Insights, where medical science gets translated into clear, practical information you can actually use. I'm here to walk you through why tinnitus intensifies at night, what's happening inside your body to make that worse, and most importantly, what you can do about it starting tonight. If you're looking for straightforward, evidence-based health content that respects your intelligence and your time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. It helps this channel reach more people who are searching for real answers, and we're building a community here focused on understanding health in ways that empower meaningful change. Let's start by talking about what tinnitus actually is, because understanding the basics makes everything else we're about to cover make a lot more sense. Tinnitus is the perception of sound when no external sound is present. It's not a disease itself. It's a symptom, a signal that something in your auditory system, your hearing pathway, is not functioning the way it's supposed to. For some people, tinnitus sounds like a high-pitched ringing. For others, it's a low hum, a buzzing, a hissing, a clicking, or even a roaring sound. It can be constant or intermittent in one ear or both, and it can range from mildly annoying to completely debilitating. The underlying causes are varied. Tinnitus can result from noise-induced hearing loss, age-related hearing changes, ear infections, earwax blockages, certain medications, head or neck injuries, temporomandibular joint disorders, and a range of other medical conditions. In many cases, it's linked to damage in the inner ear, specifically to the tiny hair cells in the cochlea that detect sound vibrations and send signals to your brain. When these hair cells are damaged or lost, they can send abnormal signals to your auditory nerve, and your brain interprets those signals as sound, even though there's no actual sound entering your ear. But here's the part that's relevant to why tinnitus gets worse at night. Your brain doesn't just passively receive these signals, it actively processes them, filters them, and decides which ones to pay attention to and which ones to ignore. And that filtering process is directly influenced by your environment, your stress level, your focus, and critically, your body's internal chemistry, especially during sleep. Now let's get to the core of why nighttime makes tinnitus worse. And this is where most explanations stop short. The common explanation you'll hear is that tinnitus seems louder at night simply because your environment is quieter. During the day, you're surrounded by ambient noise, conversations, traffic, television, music, the hum of appliances, and all of that masks the tinnitus to some degree. At night, when those external sounds disappear, the tinnitus becomes more noticeable by contrast. And yes, that's part of the story. The absence of masking noise does make tinnitus more prominent. But that's not the whole picture, because plenty of people with tinnitus report that even when they use white noise machines, fans, or other background sounds at night, the tinnitus still feels more intense than it does during the day. There's something else going on, something happening inside your body at night that actively amplifies the tinnitus signal, and it has to do with a specific neurotransmitter that fluctuates dramatically based on your sleep-wake cycle. That neurotransmitter is called serotonin. Serotonin is best known for its role in mood regulation, but it does far more than that. It's involved in regulating sleep, appetite, digestion, pain perception, and critically for this discussion, auditory processing. Your brain uses serotonin to modulate how it responds to sensory input, including the abnormal signals that create tinnitus. Research has shown that serotonin levels in your brain follow a clear daily rhythm. They're higher during the day when you're awake and active, and they drop significantly at night as your body prepares for sleep. This drop is a normal part of your circadian rhythm, and it serves an important purpose in helping you transition into sleep. But for people with tinnitus, that nighttime drop in serotonin has an unintended consequence. Lower serotonin levels reduce your brain's ability to filter out and suppress the phantom auditory signals that cause tinnitus. The abnormal nerve activity that's been there all day long suddenly gets less inhibition, less dampening, and the result is that the tinnitus sounds louder, more intrusive, and harder to ignore. It's not that the tinnitus itself is actually getting worse in a physical sense, it's that your brain's ability to keep it in the background is weakening as serotonin levels fall. Think of it this way. During the day, your brain is running a sophisticated noise-canceling system, powered in part by serotonin. That system doesn't eliminate the tinnitus completely, but it turns down the volume and keeps it from dominating your attention. At night, as serotonin drops, that noise-canceling system loses power. The tinnitus signal stays the same, but your brain's ability to suppress it weakens, so you perceive it as much louder. This is why so many people with tinnitus describe it as mild or manageable during the day, but overwhelming at night. The underlying mechanism is shifting, and most people have no idea this is even happening. Now, here's where this gets both interesting and actionable. If nighttime tinnitus is being amplified by low serotonin, then supporting healthy serotonin levels, particularly in the evening, becomes a targeted strategy for reducing the intensity of tinnitus at night. And there are specific research-backed ways to do that without medication, though we'll talk about medical options too. Let's start with diet, because what you eat and when you eat it has a direct impact on serotonin production. Serotonin is made in your brain from an amino acid called tryptophan. Tryptophan is found in protein-rich foods like turkey, chicken, eggs, cheese, nuts, seeds, and fish. But here's the tricky part. Just eating tryptophan isn't enough. For tryptophan to cross from your bloodstream into your brain, where it can be converted into serotonin, it needs help. It has to compete with other amino acids for transport across the blood-brain barrier. And it's not very good at that competition. The way to give tryptophan an advantage is to pair it with carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, your body releases insulin, and insulin helps clear other competing amino acids out of the bloodstream, which allows more tryptophan to get into your brain. This is why a small, balanced snack that combines protein and complex carbohydrates a few hours before bed can support serotonin production and potentially reduce nighttime tinnitus. Think of something like a small handful of almonds with a piece of whole grain toast, or a banana with a tablespoon of almond butter, or a small bowl of oatmeal with a few walnuts. You're not trying to eat a full meal. You're giving your brain the raw materials it needs to maintain serotonin levels as you transition into sleep. Beyond food, physical activity during the day plays a significant role in regulating serotonin. Regular exercise, particularly aerobic exercise like walking, cycling, swimming, or dancing, has been shown to increase serotonin production and improve serotonin receptor sensitivity in the brain. It also improves sleep quality overall, which indirectly helps with tinnitus, because poor sleep makes tinnitus worse, and worse tinnitus makes sleep worse, creating a vicious cycle that exercise helps break. You don't need to run marathons or spend hours in a gym. Even 20 to 30 minutes of moderate activity most days of the week can make a measurable difference. The key is consistency. Sporadic exercise doesn't have the same regulatory effect on serotonin that regular, sustained activity does. And if you can get that exercise outdoors in natural light, even better, because sunlight exposure during the day supports your circadian rhythm and helps regulate the natural rise and fall of serotonin throughout the day and night. Now let's talk about stress, because chronic stress is one of the most powerful disruptors of serotonin regulation, and it's also one of the most common aggravators of tinnitus. When you're under stress, your body produces higher levels of cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol interferes with serotonin production and function, and it also increases activity in the parts of your brain that process threat and attention, which makes you more likely to focus on the tinnitus and perceive it as more distressing. Stress doesn't cause tinnitus, but it absolutely makes it worse. And the worse your tinnitus gets, the more stressed you become, which creates another self-reinforcing loop. Managing stress isn't just about feeling calmer. It's about protecting the neurochemical environment that keeps tinnitus under control. Practices like deep breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, maintaining social connections, and engaging in hobbies you enjoy all have documented effects on reducing cortisol and supporting serotonin. These aren't luxuries or optional extras. They're practical tools that directly affect the biology underlying your tinnitus. Sleep itself is part of this equation, and it's worth understanding the two-way relationship between sleep and serotonin. Poor sleep disrupts serotonin production, and low serotonin makes it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. If your tinnitus is keeping you awake, and the lack of sleep is further depleting your serotonin, you're stuck in a cycle that gets harder to break the longer it continues. Improving sleep hygiene can help interrupt that cycle. That means keeping a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends. It means creating a bedroom environment that's cool, dark, and quiet, Or in the case of tinnitus, filled with gentle, consistent background noise that masks the tinnitus without being stimulating. White noise machines, fans, or apps that play nature, sounds like rain or ocean waves can provide just enough auditory input to cover the tinnitus without keeping your brain alert. It also means avoiding screens for at least an hour before bed, because the blue light from phones, tablets, and computers suppresses melatonin, the hormone that helps you fall asleep. And melatonin and serotonin are closely linked in your brain's sleep-wake regulation system. Caffeine and alcohol both interfere with serotonin and sleep in ways that can make nighttime tinnitus worse. Caffeine is a stimulant that stays in your system for hours, and even if you stop drinking coffee by early afternoon, residual caffeine can still disrupt your sleep architecture and reduce the quality of your rest. It also increases cortisol, which, as we talked about, undermines serotonin function. Alcohol might make you feel sleepy initially, but it disrupts the deeper stages of sleep and interferes with serotonin metabolism. Many people with tinnitus report that alcohol makes their tinnitus worse, and the mechanism likely involves both direct effects on the auditory system and indirect effects on serotonin and sleep quality. Cutting back on caffeine, especially in the afternoon and evening, and limiting or avoiding alcohol, particularly close to bedtime, are two straightforward changes that can reduce nighttime tinnitus for a lot of people. Now let's talk about magnesium, because this is a mineral that doesn't get nearly enough attention in discussions about tinnitus, and it's directly involved in both serotonin regulation and auditory function. Magnesium is a cofactor in the production of serotonin, meaning your brain needs adequate magnesium to convert tryptophan into serotonin efficiently. It also plays a protective role in the inner ear, helping to shield the delicate hair cells from damage caused by loud noise and oxidative stress. Low magnesium levels have been associated with increased severity of tinnitus, and some research suggests that magnesium supplementation can reduce tinnitus intensity, particularly in people whose tinnitus is related to noise exposure. Magnesium is also a natural muscle relaxant and has calming effects on the nervous system, which is why it's often recommended as a sleep aid. You can increase your magnesium intake through diet by eating more leafy greens, nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes, and dark chocolate. Or you can consider a magnesium supplement, particularly magnesium glycinate, which is well absorbed and less likely to cause digestive upset. As always, talk to your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you have kidney issues or take other medications, because magnesium can interact with certain drugs. Another overlooked factor in nighttime tinnitus is jaw tension and temporomandibular joint dysfunction, commonly called TMJ or TMD. The temporomandibular joint is the hinge that connects your jaw to your skull, and it sits very close to your ear. Problems with this joint, whether from teeth grinding, clenching, misalignment, or muscle tension, can contribute to or worsen tinnitus. A lot of people clench their jaws or grind their teeth at night without realizing it, and this creates tension and inflammation in the muscles and structures around the ear, which can intensify tinnitus. If you wake up with jaw pain, headaches, tooth sensitivity, or if you've been told you grind your teeth at night, this could be a contributing factor. A dentist who specializes in TMJ disorders can evaluate you and recommend treatments like a custom night guard, physical therapy, or exercises to reduce tension. Addressing TMJ issues won't cure tinnitus in most cases, but for people where jaw tension is a contributing factor, it can significantly reduce the intensity of nighttime symptoms. Blood pressure is another piece of the puzzle that connects to nighttime tinnitus in ways most people don't realize. Your blood pressure naturally fluctuates throughout the day and night, and for most people, it dips during sleep. But in some people, especially those with untreated or poorly controlled high blood pressure, nighttime blood pressure stays elevated or even rises, a condition called nocturnal hypertension. High blood pressure increases turbulent blood flow through the vessels near your inner ear, and in some cases, people can actually hear that turbulent flow as a pulsing or whooshing sound that matches their heartbeat. This is called pulsatile tinnitus, and it's different from the ringing or buzzing type, but both can be affected by blood pressure changes at night. Even non-pulsatile tinnitus can be worsened by high blood pressure because elevated pressure affects the tiny blood vessels in the inner ear and can increase inflammation and oxidative stress in the auditory system. If you have high blood pressure, getting it under control through medication, diet, exercise, stress management, and reducing sodium intake can help reduce tinnitus intensity, particularly at night. Let's also address the role of attention and perception, because this is where psychology and neuroscience meet in powerful ways. Tinnitus is not just a physical phenomenon. It's also shaped by how your brain interprets and reacts to the sound. When you focus on the tinnitus, especially in a quiet environment at night when there's nothing else to distract you, your brain amplifies the signal. This isn't something you're doing on purpose. It's an automatic response driven by the limbic system, the part of your brain that processes emotion and assigns meaning to sensory input. If your brain has learned to interpret the tinnitus as a threat, something dangerous or distressing, it will keep turning up the volume on that signal to keep you alert to the perceived threat. This is why anxiety and tinnitus are so closely linked. The more anxious you are about the tinnitus, the louder it seems. The louder it seems, the more anxious you get. Breaking this cycle requires retraining your brain's response to the sound. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy for tinnitus, or CBT, comes in. CBT helps you change the way you think about and react to tinnitus. It doesn't make the sound go away, but it reduces the distress it causes, and when you're less distressed, your brain stops amplifying the signal as much. Studies have shown that CBT can significantly improve quality of life for people with tinnitus, and there are now online and app-based CBT programs specifically designed for tinnitus that you can work through on your own or with a therapist. Sound therapy is another evidence-based approach that can reduce the perception of tinnitus, especially at night. The idea is to provide your brain with other sounds to focus on, which reduces the contrast between the tinnitus and silence, and gives your auditory system something neutral to process. This can be as simple as a bedside fan, a white noise machine, or an app that plays ambient sounds like rain, crickets, or gentle music. Some people find that specially designed notched sound therapy, which plays sounds at all frequencies except the specific frequency of their tinnitus, can help retrain the brain to pay less attention to the tinnitus over time. Hearing aids, particularly those with built-in sound generators, can also be helpful for people whose tinnitus is related to hearing loss. By amplifying external sounds during the day and providing masking sounds at night, hearing aids reduce the prominence of tinnitus and improve overall auditory input, which helps the brain recalibrate. There are also medical treatments worth discussing with a healthcare provider if your tinnitus is severe and persistent. Some antidepressants, particularly those that affect serotonin levels, like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or tricyclic antidepressants, have been studied for tinnitus, with mixed results. They don't work for everyone, but some people do experience reduction in tinnitus severity, likely because of the effects on serotonin and the brain's processing of the tinnitus signal. Melatonin supplementation has shown promise in some studies for reducing tinnitus severity and improving sleep, though the evidence is still limited and the mechanisms aren't fully understood. Ginkgo biloba is often mentioned in tinnitus discussions, but the research on its effectiveness is inconsistent, and it can interact with blood-thinning medications, so it's not something to try without medical guidance. The most important thing is to work with a healthcare provider who takes your tinnitus seriously and is willing to explore multiple approaches, because tinnitus is complex, and what works for one person may not work for another. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Tinnitus getting worse at night is not something you just have to live with. And it's not all in your head in the dismissive sense that phrase is sometimes used. It's a real physiological process driven by changes in your brain chemistry, your environment, your stress levels, and your body's internal rhythms. The nighttime drop in serotonin reduces your brain's ability to suppress the tinnitus signal, and that's the core trigger most people miss. But once you understand that, you can start making targeted changes that support serotonin regulation, reduce stress, improve sleep, and retrain your brain's response to the sound. Eating balanced meals with protein and complex carbs in the evening. Getting regular physical activity during the day. Managing stress through mindfulness and relaxation practices. Improving sleep hygiene and using sound therapy at night. Addressing jaw tension if that's a factor. Controlling blood pressure. Considering magnesium supplementation. Working with a therapist trained in CBT for tinnitus. Each of these is a piece of the puzzle, and you don't have to do all of them at once. Start with one or two that feel most doable, see what happens, and build from there. Here on Dr. Welling Insights, the mission is always the same. Take complex medical information, break it down into clear, usable knowledge, and give you tools you can actually apply in your daily life. Everything you've heard today is general education and not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Your tinnitus is unique to you, and working with a healthcare provider who understands your full health picture is the best way to find the combination of strategies that works for your situation. If this video gave you new insight or helped you understand your tinnitus in a different way, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It helps the channel grow and brings this kind of content to more people who are searching for answers. Drop a comment and let me know if you've noticed your tinnitus getting worse at night or if you found any strategies that help. I read every comment, and your experiences help shape what we talk about next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.